All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our monthly webinar series for the National Park Service's Connected Conservation Initiative. This is Brian Fainer, and I'm with the National Park Service and help support the effort. Our Connected Conservation webinars focus on how NPS staff and partners can use various tools and strategies to conserve NPS resources at the landscape and seascape level. And as many of you know, we host a webinar at least once a month, and you can find recordings of past webinars on our internal Connected Conservation Toolkit, which is accessible to all DOI staff and also the Network for Landscape Conservation website. The webinar series is open to feds and NGOs and other partners, so feel free to forward and invite your friends and colleagues in the future to future webinars. Stay tuned, but I will soon also enter links to the internal NPS toolkit into the chat box, and also a link to the Network for Landscape Conservation NPS page, and also lists upcoming webinars. And that's the place to go for non-NPS folks who want to learn more about and register for future webinars. We will post today's webinar following the presentation. We'll post a recording of it. And throughout the presentation, feel free to plug in questions that you may have into the questions box. We'll circle back and revisit the questions that you all submit during the question and answer session after the presentation. And today's presenter is Chris Stein, who serves as the Midwest Region's Chief of Heritage Areas and Partnerships. And Chris has held numerous positions in the NPS, including interpreter, chief ranger, public affairs officer, and was even the first superintendent of the National Park of the American Samoa. He has helped lead efforts to develop sister park partnerships between 14 national parks in the upper Midwest and 7 national parks and protected areas in Costa Rica. So he's done a lot of landscape conservation work, and as such, we're extremely pleased to have him present for us today. So with that, Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I really am thrilled to be able to speak with this Connected Conservation group, and thank you for providing me this opportunity to share Operation Pollination with you. I also want to thank various organizations like Monarch Joint Venture, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Xerces Society, and others for use of some of the slides that you'll see in today's program. And in some cases, individual slides are quite dense with information because this PowerPoint was developed to be a view-alone program as well. With the recent passage of the Natural Resources Omnibus Bill, there are now 55 national heritage areas in the United States. That bill added 6 new NHAs, or national heritage areas, to the existing 49 areas. And by the summer of 2019, the project called Operation Pollination will have enlisted 25 national heritage areas around the country and engage about 600 local partners in pollinator habitat restoration efforts. And this is really their story. In 2016, many of you remember our Natural Resource Advisory Group issued this guidance on the 4 pillars that should guide natural resource activities and investments. This presentation today will focus on number 3, leveraging for conservation at scale. And given my audience today, I don't think I have to describe what leveraging for conservation at scale means, but I do want to share with you what a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service refuge manager once said to me that really stuck. He said, Chris, if you're standing on your refuge boundary, looking at the sign with the goose on it, you're looking in the wrong direction. So given our NPS guidance, Operation Pollination was conceived to protect pollinators and their habitat. You all know the insect pollinators, and as you also know, what's often surprising to a lot of people is that other animals like some birds, mammals, and lizards can also be pollinators. Brian mentioned that I served at one time as the superintendent of the National Park of American Samoa, and my chief of resource management at the time was Bob Cook and his wife Mary Hake, who's maybe on the phone today. who now works up in Alaska, we would see flying fox fruit bats with 3-foot wingspans flying around during the day, going around doing their business pollinating the rainforest plants. And this beautiful quote from Marcel Proust encourages people to see their landscape with new eyes. But with those new eyes, no one wants to see this, a world without pollinators. And this is a whole food setup thanks to the Xerces Society, showing what our supermarkets would look like with 1/3 of the food missing. Operation Pollination is a National Heritage Area initiative that encourages NHAs and their many local partners to see their respective NHAs with new eyes. This initiative, which all are welcome to join, helps get NHAs involved in a national conservation priority project. Please know that parks can just as easily join Operation Pollination, and I invite and encourage all of you on this webinar today to seriously think about this suggestion. Operation Pollination helps involve NHAs or parks to do something that not only helps protect the planet, but also raises their visibility at the same time. But being human, it's not uncommon to hear comments like, we don't have the time, we don't have the staff, we don't have the money. And that's when I say great news. Operation Pollination can be accomplished with existing staff and no new money. And like everything in life we do, it's all a matter of setting priorities. So where did Operation Pollination begin? In the winter of 2015, in the St. Croix Valley of Minnesota and Wisconsin, in the area that's in the proposed North Woods and Waters of the St. Croix National Heritage Area, the 3 federal land management agencies who have a footprint in the St. Croix Valley, which are the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the National Park Service, we got together to discuss issues of common concern. Issues like climate change, habitat restoration, endangered species, water quality, and pollinators. And after that initial meeting, we decided that we actually liked each other and we should meet again to work on a project together. That meeting was the genesis of the St. Croix Valley Pollinator Partnership, which kicked off in August of 2015 at Anderson Corporation headquarters located in the St. Croix Valley. The 3 federal agencies were represented at this kickoff, as was Congresswoman Betty McCollum, who helped us with the celebration. Congresswoman McCollum, as some of you know, is the chair of the House Interior Appropriations Subcommittee. And that is the subcommittee that provides all the land management agencies their annual appropriations. And Congresswoman McCollum is a great champion of monarchs and other pollinators. That August of 2015, the 3 federal agencies had signed a pollinator resolution, and they asked local partners to sign a pollinator pledge form that committed them to take positive action for pollinators. At the kickoff celebration, as this back of this resolution shows, we had 70 local partners signed on board, from big companies like Xcel Energy and Anderson Corporation to smaller ones like Yoga by Julie, who's my former yoga instructor, and the Osceola Braves Little League Baseball team. This was the first pollinator partnership that led to the Operation Pollination project. And I remind you that each one of these organizations, they have signed a pollinator pledge form that commits them to do something for pollinators. In the Midwest region, Operation Pollination focuses on an iconic pollinator species, the monarch butterfly. And as you all know, the monarch has drastically declined in numbers since the 1990s. This population density map clearly shows why we're focusing on the monarch in the Midwest region. The Midwest region encompasses the states within that white line on the map, from North Dakota to Ohio to Arkansas and back up to North Dakota. Orange is the hot zone for monarch migration. But please know that Operation Pollination is about all pollinators, not just the monarch. The Midwest region, we're focused on the monarch as our iconic flagship species because it's prevalent here. Each NHA or park can select whatever species they want to focus on, if they want to focus on a species. But there's not one area of the United States that doesn't have pollinators. Perhaps some of you listening to this webinar have been to this mountaintop in Mexico, where in winter it looks like the color of monarchs. Of course, that's because that colorful mass is monarchs. An overwintering population that is the result of one of the greatest animal migrations in the world. If anyone? I think I see all your heads shaking up and down. But we better go on that field trip soon, because this bar graph clearly shows the decline in hectares of those overwintering monarchs on those Mexican mountains. But great news, as many of you know, it was really, really good news this winter for monarchs on those mountaintops. The number of hectares shot up to 6 hectares, or about 15 acres. And that was a 140% increase over last year's overwintering population. You can see from the bar graph, the population does tend to fluctuate, but we're now starting to get back up into the 6 range, which is really great. So what can national heritage areas do to help pollinators? What can parks do to help? In keeping it simple, first draft a pollinator resolution specific to your locale. Next, ask your local partners to sign a pollinator pledge form that commits them to take action, like plant milkweed if you're in the monarch's range, or a nectar garden, or educate kids and adults about pollinators, or plant a prairie. Then put your partner names on the back of your resolution and obtain widespread media attention. Here is an example of a simple pollinator resolution. This one is from Gettysburg National Military Park and Eisenhower National Historic Site, partnering with the Gettysburg Foundation and the Eisenhower Society as co-equal partners. This was done for Pollinator Week 2018. And here is an example of a pollinator pledge form. Put the partner organization's name at the top of the form and state what their pollinator commitment is. With the pledge form, please know that Uncle Sam or anyone does not come back to check up on what partners say they will do. There is really zero accountability. This project is purposely built on trust. Next. And here, again, are the local partner names placed on the back of the St. Croix Valley Pollinator Partnership Resolution. It started out with 70 partner names on it. It now has 125 local partner names on it. And this year, the proposed North Woods and Waters of the St. Croix National Heritage Area that now manages the partnership, they have a goal to obtain a total of 150 partner pledge names for the back of this resolution by this summer. Remember, it started out back in 2015 with 70 names. Now in 2019, it will probably have 150 names by the end of this summer. And those 150 partners, no matter how big or small they are, they're all doing something positive for pollinators. We also got this resolution got great media attention from the Twin Cities media market, and I expect it will continue to get great media attention. So it's that simple. A pollinator partnership is your pollinator resolution, your pollinator pledge forms, then you put your pollinator partner names on the back of your resolution, and you get widespread media attention. Now I'd just like to take a little commercial break and tell you how the St. Croix Valley Pollinator Partnership really stepped it up. At this stage of the game, we're not expecting this from all of the national heritage areas or others who sign pollinator resolutions, but I just want to show you the possibilities. By the way, that's not your cat litter box in the top left corner. That is milkweed and wildflower seed collected from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's St. Croix Wetland Management District. And in 2015, the St. Croix Valley Pollinator Partnership, as I said, really stepped things up by applying for a NIFWIF grant with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as our lead. But the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, also known as NIFWIF, did not fund our initial request. However, in 2016, we applied again, and this time we received a $198,000 grant from NIFWIF to restore about 1,000 acres of pollinator habitat. And these photos show that dramatic transformation from the seed to that seed spreader on the snow, spreading seed in the winter of 2017 on the melting snow. And by summer, that photo on the bottom shows the restored habitat that is the result of this NIFWIF grant effort. That was just in 1 year. And those of you who have received NIFWIF grants in the past, you know that there's a ton of accountability once their money begins to flow to a project. Back to the program history. Enter the National Heritage Areas. As most of you know, National Heritage Areas are large, lived-in landscapes with nationally important stories to share, where sometimes millions of people live. And when we say large, we really mean large, not Alaska large, but large for the continental United States. In the Midwest region alone, the square mileage of the region's 8 NHAs exceeds the area of the state of Minnesota. In 2018, 3 Midwest region NHAs were asked to voluntarily participate in Operation Pollination by creating their own pollinator resolutions. Those areas are Northern Plains National Heritage Area in North Dakota, around Bismarck, Abraham Lincoln National Heritage Area in Illinois, around Springfield, and Motor Cities National Heritage Area in Michigan, around Detroit. And I cannot thank the executive directors and staff of these 3 NHA areas enough for their extraordinary leadership in Operation Pollination. If it wasn't for these 3 executive directors and their staff's leadership, Operation Pollination would not have taken off like it has taken off. At Motor Cities National Heritage Area, these first I'd like to just say these are the 3 quotes from the executive directors from those areas. And at Motor Cities National Heritage Area, Executive Director Sean Palmerville-Size, she held a public event to launch their resolution. Sean even invited this guy that I call the zookeeper to the event. And those bars, by the way, they're not to keep the bees in. They're to keep the people out. This is right in downtown Detroit. At the event, inner city kids came to learn about pollinators, and everyone had a fun educational experience. Here are the local partners that Motor Cities asked to sign the Pollinator Pledge forms. Again, all these partners have committed to do something for pollinators. At Northern Plains National Heritage Area, along a free-flowing stretch of the Missouri River, that's a recreated Mandan village in the front, by the way. I've not been there myself, so I can't answer what those things are in the top of the Mandan homes, but I know they're not swamp coolers, this I know. But what they are, I don't know, I'll have to check on that. But at Northern Plains National Heritage Area, Executive Director Aaron Barth, he asked his partners to do things. Sometimes they were already doing things, but with becoming part of the Northern Plains National Heritage Area's Pollinator Resolution, Executive Director Aaron Barth's partners felt like they are part of a bigger effort, which of course they are. And here are the local partners that Aaron asked to sign their Pollinator Pledge. Executive Director Sarah Watson from Abraham Lincoln National Heritage Area. She was even able to convince Minnie Abe to sign on to the cause. And here are the local partners that Sarah and her team enlisted. These lists, by the way, are growing. They're still asking local partners to join. So what are some of the things that local partners pledge to do for these early adopter NHAs? Please take half a minute or so to read these accomplishments. I'll come back in half a minute. And these? I'm particularly impressed by that last pledge, which is from a electric company. Of course, we'd love to see strip mine land totally restored, but our pollinators, as long as it's growing the right vegetation, they don't necessarily care what the land looks like as long as it has the habitat that they need. Please know that with the pollinator habitat protection and restoration projects that are part of Operation Pollination, no one organization is in charge. Protecting pollinators, as you all know, is a huge tent. There's thousands and thousands of people involved with this effort, and everyone is welcome to participate in ways that make sense to you. As was mentioned, Operation Pollination helps NHAs feel like they are part of a much bigger national conservation priority. Everyone is welcome to join Operation Pollination or any other pollinator effort. And I want all of you to know that I am at your service if you decide that you'd like to do a similar thing in your park or national heritage area. Like most of you viewing this webinar today, my main objective is to simply help the plants and animals of the world that don't have a voice. Any of you from any NPS region or any organization listening can ask me for advice or help, and I'll give my contact information at the end of the program. Enter the National Park Foundation. Please know that National Park Foundation's relatively new 5-year strategic plan now recognizes collaborative landscape conservation as part of NPF's funding portfolio. And we have Ray Savageau and Elaine Leslie and their teams to thank for this. I want to thank you guys so much for convincing the National Park Foundation that collaborative landscape conservation should be part of their funding portfolio. Now enter Rotary International. As you all know by now, Operation Pollination is all about engaging local partners. Some of these partners, like my former yoga instructor, Yoga by Julie, they're not our traditional ones. Rotary is a more established partner, and you need to know that Rotary International has been a tremendous partner to Operation Pollination. My Rotary district, which is District 5960, has committed to reach out to Rotarians in Canada, the USA, and Mexico, where the monarchs migrate to work on small-scale habitat restoration projects, like simple gardens in people's yards, or maybe a beautiful community garden. This one I found out on Long Island. And here's my Rotary team. I'll call them my Rotary team: Marlene, Judy, and Craig. And by the way, the PDG in front of their name, it does not stand for pretty damn good, although each of them are pretty damn good. That PDG stands for past district governor. At one time, Marlene, Judy, and Craig, they were the top leaders in their district. And I like to tell my supervisors in the regional office that with Rotary behind Operation Pollination, I may not have a staff, but I definitely have an army backing me up. So how does the Rotary connection work? First off, Rotary is one of the largest community service organizations in the world. There are 1.2 million Rotarians worldwide in 200 countries. As many of you know, Rotarians are business and community leaders who volunteer their time and talent to help make the world a better place. And organizationally, Rotary divides the world into zones. Each zone is divided into districts, and each district is divided into clubs. While club membership varies greatly, each district is comprised of about 3,000 Rotarians led by their annually elected district governor. So each of these areas with 4 numbers in it is one district. These 2 circles on the map show where 2 Midwest region NHAs are located, superimposed on the Rotary districts. Abraham Lincoln NHA in Illinois is encompassed by Rotary districts 6460 and 6490. And Freedom's Frontier NHA in Missouri and Kansas is accompanied by those 3 Rotary districts that you see. And in each of those districts, remember, there are about 3,000 dedicated Rotarians who all want to improve the quality of life in their communities. This is a tremendous source of human energy that we have only scratched the surface of so far. And I'm hoping that with Operation Pollination, that we can show the extraordinary power of Rotary volunteers. And I thank Rotary very much. So in summary, in 2019, a total of 25 national heritage areas have told me that they want to be a part of Operation Pollination. That's 25 national heritage areas engaged in a program that began in the St. Croix Valley of Minnesota and Wisconsin in 2015, but has only actively engaged other heritage areas since 2018. Only two years have other areas been engaged. By 2023, it'd be great to have a goal for all of those 55 national heritage areas to volunteer to be a part of Operation Pollination, and I actually think we can achieve that goal. By the summer of 2019, it is possible that these 25 NHAs will have at least 600 local partners who have signed a pollinator pledge to actively work in support of pollinators. The 4 heritage areas that are currently signed on to Operation Pollination, they have already 200 partners, and if 20 areas only got 20 pledge partners each, That would be 400 more partners, and that'd be 600 partners altogether. Also, the alliance, called the Alliance of National Heritage Areas, has gotten behind Operation Pollination and has made some promising statements about supporting the cause. Remember, only you can help protect pollinators. And I do again want to publicly recognize those 3 NHA executive directors and staff: Sarah Watson from Abraham Lincoln NHA, Sean Palmerville-Size from Motor Cities NHA, and Aaron Barth from the Northern Plains NHA, who were the first to join this cause. Their success stories will now be built upon by the other NHAs and maybe even you. The end goal: pollinators equals food security equals national security, if you need a selfish reason. And that's why one of my next stops will undoubtedly be Homeland Security. I hope that this program on Operation Pollination has helped give you some new eyes, and that you arrive back where you started and know the place for the first time. And in closing, I invite all of you to contact me at any time to discuss your great pollinator projects or to get you involved in Operation Pollination. Here is my contact information. And thank you so very much for your time and attention this afternoon. Again, thank you, Connected Conservation Group, for highlighting this important conservation priority. Back to you, Brian.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Awesome presentation. So we've got a few questions already. And again, a reminder, folks, if you have questions for Chris, click on that questions tab, and you can type in your questions that way, and we'll read them to Chris. All right, here's one for you, Chris. Are Rotarians asking organizations to sign Operation Pollination resolution pledges? Okay, let me back up. Are Rotarians asking organizations to sign Operation Pollination resolutions pledges? ? How will this coordinate with NHAs?
Good question. Yes, the answer to that is yes. Rotarians are making a great effort to get the word out. First off, in Rotary districts around the Interstate 35 corridor in the Midwest, which has been determined to be an important place for monarch migration. So they are asking their district governors or their club presidents to do a similar thing. Of course, where these Rotarians are within an existing national heritage area, that's great because they will be a source of power for the NHAs. But if Rotarians outside of NHAs want to do something too, the butterflies, they don't know the boundaries of an NHA. That's absolutely fine, and the Rotarians are doing that.
Great. All right, here's another one for you. We heard recently from Dr. Robert Giger at WPI that many of the pollinator plant lists that are on websites and even from well-respected organizations are not tailored enough for really doing the most good in different regions. Are you familiar with his work? ? Do you know where are the seed mixes and plant lists that are being used from, that are best, I guess, that are out there?
Okay, well, I'll have to say you've stumped me on this one. I'm not familiar with his work. I don't claim to be a biologist, by the way, but I would have, if you were just a regular person asking me that question, I would say go to Google and search pollinators, and you'll find plenty of lists. But now this is very interesting information that you're providing me, and it's the first I'm hearing about it, and perhaps the first for many on the call as well. So when you find whoever that is who asked that question, when you find out information, if you could please send me that information, I will make sure that word gets out.
Great. Yeah, just real quick, I am aware that I think the Pollinator Partnership might be a good place to go, or the Xerxes Foundation or organization as well, off the top of my head. But feel free to maybe email Chris with that, and I'm sure we can get back with you with some more information.
Yeah, and I don't know if Xerxes is on the phone or not, but if anybody from Xerxes is on the phone, if you have up-to-date information, if you could share that with Brian so he can share that with all of us, that would be great.
Yeah, great. All right, so how do we access the recorded webinar? Good question. For internal Park Service people, it's in our internal toolkit. For those who are not within the Park Service or Department of Interior, again, if you go to the chat box, or it's also in the answer box there, the Park Service has a page on the Network for Landscape Conservation, and recordings will be posted of this webinar, and future webinars will be posted there. All right, here's a question. Most states have native plant societies, which could also be of help. Yeah, that's from John Putnam.
That's true. Right. John's great. I thought he'd be tired of me by now.
Hey, I got a quick one for you, Chris. Have state departments of transportation, the state DOTs, have they gotten involved? I know some states do a lot of pollinator habitat in the medians and things like that.
Yes, states are heavily involved in pollinator habitat restoration. But on the pledges that I saw coming back from the 3 NHAs that are currently, or the 4 NHAs that are currently involved, I see no state DOT on there. So that is definitely low-hanging fruit for those 4 NHAs that are currently signed on board Operation Pollination, and the other 21 that are coming on board this year to go to their state DOT to get them to sign on board. So far, we have been opportunistic, and this is an additional thing for National Heritage Area executive directors and their staff to do. So we don't want to be too prescriptive to them. So whatever partners they can sign up, is great. Eventually, though, as this becomes more sophisticated, I would see that we would probably have a list of organizations that new members of Operation Pollination should try to go to. Thank you.
Great. Hey, on that same note, how about any tourism bureaus, like for towns, or even I guess at states? There's the tourism departments. Have they gotten involved that you're aware of?
I have not seen that listed yet, but really the sky is the limit. Large organizations, small organizations, for-profit organizations, not-for-profit organizations, anyone who believes in protecting pollinators and is willing to do anything. Plant milkweed seeds. I mean, if you're walking through a meadow someday and you open up a milkweed, spread some seeds. Help nature out. Anything large or small, we accept on a pledge form. And again, Uncle Sam or no one goes back to check up on whether or not these partners are actually doing what they say. It's all built on trust. Ultimately, as we move towards a phase 2 on this project, I would like to see national heritage areas and others do what we did in the St. Croix Valley and apply for either a NIFWIF grant or apply to the National Park Foundation, now that the National Park Foundation has embraced collaborative landscape conservation, and actually do some real serious habitat restoration.
Yeah. Well, there's a great entry here from Melissa with, I assume, Fish and Wildlife Service. She said, here at Fish and Wildlife Service, we work with state DOT on monarch habitat. They are great partners. So that's great. Awesome to hear.
Yep.
And there's another comment here. Pheasants Forever also work on native regional mixes for a very good rate.
Very good. And Pheasants Forever and Quails Forever are 2 of the organizations that signed the original St. Croix Valley Pollinator Partnership in 2015. So those are 2 great organizations to go to.
Awesome. All right, here's another one. Have any NHAs included this as part of what they highlight on their websites?
I think it's too new for that. That is great. Again, we're not telling, it's all voluntary right now, and I am hoping that my NHA brethren see the wisdom that this actually can help raise their profile in the eyes of conservationists around the United States, with all NHAs working on a common conservation priority. If you are searching any NHA websites and you find one where it highlights this, please let me know. That's a great question, and I'll be in Detroit later this month on a pollinator panel at Motor Cities, and I'm going to ask them if they've done that. So thanks for the question.
Great. Oh, someone was asking here, could we get a copy of an example agreement or the pledge? Or where do folks go to get that?
Absolutely. You can contact me directly. Just send me an email at that email address that you see on there, and I'll send you a copy of a resolution, a copy of a pledge form. No problem.
Great.
This project does not have a website yet. I know it's something that Rotary has been talking about helping out with, which would be wonderful. Because as I said, I have no staff, but I do have the army of Rotary behind me.
Okay. Someone found that on the Northern Plains Heritage Area, there is actually, I guess, a reference to the pollinator Operation Pollination, Chris. So
beautiful.
It's getting out there.
Good. That's perfect.
Someone commented here. Yeah, someone commented here. Please email link of recorded session of this webinar for those of us who are not able to dial in via phone to hear. I guess some people were trying to join through their computers, and this was by phone only. So again, we will have that. This webinar is being recorded, and it will again be posted to the Network for Landscape Conservation website for everyone to access. All right, here's another one for you. It's easy to engage people to talk about monarchs or other pollinators and then get them interested in NHAs or entry for those who do not know. So someone's just making the point that is it.
Question. Oh yeah. Yes, it is. It is easy. I have not personally been involved in every single one of the 200 pollinator partners that have currently signed on board, but I can tell you that there was only one group that we asked that said that they would not sign on board, and that was for religious freedom reasons, of all things. Who knows? I didn't quite get that, but it is very easy to engage people in pollinators. Everybody loves pollinators. A recent survey in Minnesota showed that 87% of the adults that were surveyed were concerned about the decline in pollinator health. It's a message that's out there, and I like to say to my National Heritage Area colleagues, how many of the people who live within your heritage area even know that they are within a heritage area? Yet, 87% of the population knows about pollinators. So by joining on this pollinator bandwagon, I see it as all ships can rise.
Great. All right. Well, our next webinar for the Connected Conservation webinar series is going to be April 17 at 3 o'clock, and our presenter will be the Trust for Public Land, and they'll be talking about their landscape conservation efforts. And I'm going ahead and paste into the chat box a link for everyone where you can go to register for that webinar. So with
That's
that,
great. And I thank you, Brian, and everyone on this phone for your attention and time this afternoon.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Chris, for your innovative efforts there, utilizing the national heritage areas, for this effort. It's just really another great reminder that the Park Service has a lot of great programs that can be used to elevate and bring together people for good things, for natural resources,
Right.
cultural resources, recreation, in this case, pollinator habitat. There's a lot of opportunities there. And so thank you for all your work. This is pretty awesome how you've done the outreach to the Rotary Club in particular. I thought that was awesome.
Great. Well, they're a wonderful group to work with.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining.
Have
a great rest of your week.
You too.